Hello, welcome to this presentation on Sitecore Managed Cloud by Datacom and Sitecore. I'm Pablo Matamoros. I'm the principal consultant at Datacom. We are an IT organization based in New Zealand. We do a lot of implementations across Australia and New Zealand. I've been working about 10 years with the platform with Sitecore, and in the last few years, we've done a few managed cloud implementations. So I'll introduce Navneet.
Hello, everyone, or hello, world. Thank you again for joining this presentation. My name is Navneet Pisharodi. I'm a Sitecore architect and technical lead with Datacom. I have done Sitecore for many years now. I've been in this industry for 17 years doing software implementations. I've done a few managed cloud implementations, completing one recently. It's great to take you all through this presentation.
So what is Sitecore Managed Cloud? So basically, let's go first through the agenda of what we're going to discuss. We're going to see an overview of what the platform is, why our clients chose to move to Managed Cloud, where the responsibilities lies between the partners, Sitecore, and you, the preparation that you need to move in, what documentation you need to look, what part of the source code you need to prepare for, what are the activities that you need to follow in a project, what are the dependencies, where you can get it wrong, and how we overcome those issues. And finally, what's the outcome? What's the benefits that our clients seen so far in the platform? So first, let's have an overview of what is the hosting spectrum that you have nowadays. So you start from on-premises, where you have everything in physical and hardware. So you need to implement your software, your operative systems. So everything is expenditures from hardware to software licenses, and also maintenance of those operative systems. You have upgrades, patches, and so on. The next level is infrastructure as a service. So you're getting rid of the management of hardware, but you're still having to manage your operative systems, your software licenses, security, and so on. Typically, information infrastructure as a service is virtual machines and kits similar to that. The next level up is when you start getting more into a microservice architecture, you use platform as a service. So in the case of Azure, you will have web apps, you will have logic functions, you will have Azure SQL, and so on. So Sitecore has templates that you can run in Microsoft Azure and set up your own solution, your own Sitecore solution. However, then you still need to maintain the hosting part of it. So you're not patching operative systems, you're not patching or installing licenses and so on, but you still need to configure how all these services talk together. So that's where comes Managed Cloud. Managed Cloud, what it does effectively is managing the platform as a service infrastructure for you with the experience that Sitecore has running Sitecore at this level. So when you go to Managed Cloud, they take care of everything that is hosting. Your responsibility is on the application that you build and the configuration that you use in Sitecore. But anything related with Microsoft at the platform, Sitecore will take care for you. Now, why our clients decided to move to Managed Clouds if, like we're saying, in platform as a service, you can implement it yourself? So there are a few reasons for that. The first one, many clients are on-premise, and like we discussed, they have a lot of costs involved with hardware and operative systems and so on. So jumping to the cloud, going to infrastructure as a service, and for many scenarios didn't make any sense. So they jump straight away to platform as a service. So, and at that point, it was an assessment of, do we want to still manage hosting or we pass it to Managed Cloud? In many scenarios that we analyzed, it actually involved quite a good cost reduction because you are bundling licenses with the Azure cost as well. And also, it's only one contract that you need to deal with. For example, in an on-premises solution, you will have the hardware team maintaining it, so maybe one vendor doing it. Then you might have another team maintaining all the security of that hardware, and the operating systems will be another team, and so on. So you can have up to 5 different teams working. In this context, you will have only Sitecore that you need to deal with, and they take off the hosting care of hosting. The other reason as well is Sitecore has a good relationship with Microsoft. So not only you can escalate quickly issues with Microsoft is something that is happening at the hosting level, but also the rates that they get are better than if you go on your own and let's say you have only a web app that you need to set up. If you're a small organization, the rates will be higher for you than what Sitecore can get because they're one of the biggest consumers of Azure. The next important information is they use standard templates that are familiar to everyone, including the support team, of course. So when you call, whoever picks up the call from the support team, they know your solution. They will know your solution because it's an XM, it's an XP, it's certain sizes. So they are aware of what might be installed in terms of hosting. The last important topic on this is Sitecore is moving slowly to a software as a service model. That means that more and more the services won't be hosted anywhere other than in their own environments. So the first example that you can see is the new proposal that Sitecore is putting in the market. Is the only piece that is platform as a service is a Sitecore XM solution. Everything else is Sitecore Edge to give you CDN service for the delivery side of it. You have Content Hub, you have Order Cloud, and a few other products that they are acquiring at the moment. So eventually, your Sitecore CMS will be also software as a service solution. So this is a step towards that, so you get used to the model and just dealing with Sitecore. Now, a couple of examples of why our clients move over. The first example is Auckland Airport. Last year with COVID and this year, Auckland Airport was very, very impacted in terms of revenue, no flights at all. And also for those that don't know, in New Zealand, it's very hard to come in and go out. This lockdown is strict as well, some scenarios. So no flights at all, pretty much. So they needed to reduce costs. There was no choice for them. They had at that moment infrastructure as a service set up. Again, a lot of cost in terms of people maintaining that environment. So we went through an exercise of reviewing if they were using XP, if the XP features, we could remove them and go through XM. And from that as well, what part of the infrastructure was really needed and what wasn't. There was a lot of redundancy that probably they didn't need. So we rationalized the solution to be a PaaS solution in XM, from XP to XM. And that solution has been working quite well for them, not only saved them a lot of money, but also it's been very stable as well. The next example is different. It was cost savings the driver for this. It was more time to market on any improvement that we did. The solution that they have in the past was infrastructure as a service in AWS. And because it was AWS, there were a lot of PowerShells and a lot of different elements in the DevOps model that made it really complex to maintain, but also very fragile. They had problems very often when they were doing a release that the DevOps model would break or something will go wrong. So we, again, reviewed the solution, proposed, let's simplify your infrastructure by using a platform as a service model. And since we were doing that exercise, we proposed to do it through Managed Cloud. And the client was happy to do that. So we moved them to that model. And it's been working as well, quite well for us. Reduced our burden in terms of maintaining hosting and DevOps environment, and also make every release really quick. Literally, in 15 minutes, we do a release nowadays when the client decides to do so. The next example is similar to Auckland Airport. In this scenario, the client already have platform as a service running in Microsoft, and they were using standard templates from Sitecore. So the migration to Managed Cloud was very simple for us, but the driver was purely cost. They got very heavily impacted with COVID, so there was a lot of movements internally in the organization, and they decided to outsource all the maintenance of these services in terms of hosting. So that's what they did. Instead of managing themselves the platform as a service platform, they move everything to Managed Cloud. And again, it worked well in terms of costings, but also in terms of how stable the solution is. So I'll pass it now to my colleague to discuss some more details on the preparation that you need to do to move to Sitecore Managed Cloud.
So essentially, there are three key stakeholders in this entire process: the organization, the partner, and the Sitecore Managed Cloud team. The Sitecore Managed Cloud team takes care of hosting, monitoring, your platform support. If you need to liaison with Microsoft, they are there for you. As a partner, we come in, like Datacom can come in and advise you on the sizing. If you need to do a migration, we can help you with migration, application support, and patches. And then as an organization, you're responsible for raising your service requests, any requests that are related to managed cloud. If you have an internal IT team, even you can help with migration support and upgrades. So moving forward, let's look at what preparation we need to do. Obviously, there's a lot of information that needs to be handy. We need to know how many visitors we have, say, in a day. What are the concurrent number of visitors? When is the application used primarily? Like what time of the day do you see high usage on the application? What features in your website are most used by users? Those are extremely important because they determine what sizing you need and how your hosting matters. Then you need to decide whether you need XP or XM. Of course, I have seen scenarios where XP is used, but we don't use any marketing features. So in such a scenario, you can actually go with XM. Sitecore modules in use, what modules you need. Of course, those determine what modules you need on managed cloud. The third-party integrations, you might have third-party integrations that need to be taken care of even when you move onto the cloud. Your DevOps configuration, again, we don't want any manual DevOps configuration. We want automated DevOps wherever possible. The non-production environment needs, like how many dev environments you need, how many staging, how many production, and so on. Auto scaling, extremely important and very useful in the sense that if you've got non-production environments sitting there and billing over the weekend, and if no one's using it, you can set up auto scaling so that those environments can be scaled down over the weekend and then scaled back up again. Your disaster recovery requirements, do you need a cold DR, do you need a hot DR, and so on. And of course, firewall and security requirements in the sense that if you're moving from an on-premise to the cloud, there's quite a lot of firewalls that you might have already set up that needs to be accounted for in your cloud instance. Another few areas to review are, source code and configuration, your technical debts. If you have an application that was there for a while, if it has been sitting there for a while, there would have been multiple upgrades done. A lot of people might have worked on it. You could have had a lot of lines of code written, high cyclomatic complexity. This is the right time to go back and review the source code to make sure that, you clear off your technical debts. Make sure that if there's any configuration that's in there that's not suitable for the cloud, that's taken care of. Your .NET version, you need to make sure that it aligns with the version that is supported on the cloud. Any Sitecore patches, make sure those are reviewed because when you move to the cloud, you probably don't need those patches anymore. They'll be automatically taken care of. And caching configuration, I should mention that again because caching, it does not come into play much. You won't realize the importance of caching when you're on-premise, but the moment you move on to the cloud, it'll definitely matter. So always go back and review your caching requirements. And of course, any modules that are not supported any longer, like WFFM, which is not supported any longer. Another important aspect is search. If you're on Lucene, of course, you need to either move to Solar or Azure Search. With Azure Search, keep in mind that starting version 10, Azure Search is not supported anymore. So Solar is the right candidate. And with Managed Cloud, you get Solar as a service. So you need to ensure, what is the size of your indexes? How many search queries do you execute? So have a metrics of your Solar ready to discuss with Sitecore so that you know what your hosting requirements are with respect to search. Always abstract your code in the sense that, don't have a loose coupling with your search provider so that you can adjust accordingly. And always ensure that you update your Solar config to have proper caching of your indexes wherever required because that improves your response times. Now, sizing of your databases is important because let's assume that, for example, you have your media stored in Sitecore, your database sizes might be huge. So you need to understand what your DTU limits are. Your backup requirements, you might need point-in-time backups or you might need weekly backups. It all depends on as an organization, what you require. So make sure you have all of that ironed out. Architect the whole thing, just make sure you have that information ready for Sitecore. What are your compliance requirements? You might have requirement that you probably need a specific data center where all your data needs to reside in. You might want your data encrypted. So keep in mind that it's important to have all of this lined out before you have that discussion. And your marketing automation needs, if you are doing quite a lot of marketing automation, that determines if your marketing automation databases are, need to be scaled accordingly. And then, of course, custom requirements. Let's suppose that you have, custom logging set up through Datadog or Sumo Logic. Always have everything worded out, have that discussed with Sitecore ahead of time so that they can review the request and accommodate accordingly. Keep in mind that when a default instance is spun up, it does not spin up custom requirements. Now, your non-production, non-Sitecore applications, over time, you might have accumulated JavaScript applications that are sitting alongside your Sitecore application. Just make sure you review all of those. Again, any DR requirements, any CDN requirements, this is the right time to go back and review all of those. And of course, as an organization, your IT team would need to come in and review the SSL requests and any DNS requests that the team has so that all of those can be set up and configured. The last piece, naming convention, what it means is if you need specific naming conventions for your production and non-production environments, keep in mind that Sitecore Managed Cloud always uses GUID for identification. So you might have to work with Sitecore to kind of figure out what your GUIDs for each of the production and non-production environments are. So at this stage, let me hand it over back to my colleague so that he can take you forward.
So Navneet has covered different areas that you need to look in the project. So let's recap what are the steps when you do a migration. The first step is assessing your current solution. So as we say, review anything that you have in place and what you will need. The next step, once you have all this information, is to plan the project. And that involves the commercials with Sitecore, because that part of the process, you are agreeing with them the sizing of your solution. Next step is migrating, and there are a few things that you can do in parallel. For example, while Sitecore is provisioning your environments, you can work in any fixes that you identify you need to make in your solution. Of course, DevOps configuration, you will need the environment to be in place to start tweaking all the accesses and everything else. And the same with the configuration, like Navneet was mentioning, the caching configuration. At this point is when you start tweaking until you get the perfect sizing. Testing is very important, particularly with performance. Again, taking the example of caching, this is an area that usually you start working a lot, what you cache, what you don't, for improving performance. And the usual test, your security teams will require a penetration test and regression test for any functionality, especially if you are connecting to third-party products, to make sure that you're still able to connect to that. The final piece is the launch day. In that day, please make sure that everyone involved is in a call. Nowadays, everyone is on Teams in a call. So that means Sitecore staff members, if you need someone from Microsoft, your team, your client, because it's easy to switch over, but if something goes wrong, the last thing you want is to have a website down. So you want to roll back straight away. After you do the launch, it is very important to keep an eye on your solution. You can keep tweaking. You can do things like Navneet mentioned, auto-scaling. You can, find out, okay, I need more instances of a delivery server to keep a good load in your service. So that's something that you keep continuing doing over time. Now, where we got it wrong in the past is one of the things was we reviewed solution in a few of these scenarios that we discussed, these examples. We didn't build the platform, was another partner. And we migrated the solution to Sitecore Managed Cloud, and we have serious performance issues. And that was because the solution was poorly written. So we had to rewrite sections of that site. And other areas we had to increase, for example, the solar size. The solar size that was agreed with Sitecore was the standard one, but because the solution was heavily dependent on solar, the memory usage was quite high. So preparation is key, and we failed in that example in a few areas. We learned from that, and onwards we look at so many areas of a solution that we didn't make that mistake again. Underestimating the effort, don't rush it. It's even if you hear from whoever you hear, hey, you can do the jump straight away, it's going to take you a couple of weeks, that's it. That's not true. You need to do a lot of testing, make sure that everything works. And even in the shortest one that we did, it took us a month, and most of the month was on testing. The other issue is lack of clarity on who's responsible for what. We still get that with some of our clients. They get briefed and introduced on how the process works, but a lot of the requests get to us as a partner, when in reality it's Sitecore that's taking care. You don't want to waste time when something goes wrong. Let's say you have a critical issue with the site is down for whatever reason, and it's all hosting based and you call straight away your partner, you're losing time. And that because then we review it, we know it's hosting, going back and forward. So our advice is you have an issue, raise a ticket with Sitecore straight away. If it's not with Sitecore, at least you have the ticket up. And again, don't delay talking to Sitecore. That's why you sign a contract, just directly raise a ticket and follow process. The process is important. You need to raise the ticket first in the portal and then call them on the phone, because otherwise when you call, they will ask you for the ticket number, they will ask you for information related to the ticket, and they won't have it there, and they will ask you to raise the ticket. The other issue that you need to be careful is firewalls. If you're using a firewall that is not your standard Microsoft product, not the WAF or any of those that come with the Sitecore Managed Cloud platform, you need to test it properly. Don't assume the traffic will come through and Sitecore will resolve the website properly. We had an issue of the firewall from a client that we needed to configure the DNS redirection in a certain way to make it work. And otherwise, the website wouldn't run at all and will hit Azure and it will have a blue screen. The next level is, and I need to refer to this, if you have a third-party product that needs to be part of the Azure setup, you need to be aware of that and also agree with Sitecore if they will implement it or your partner. In some of these applications, like, for example, we use Sumo Logic, it needed additional resources that were sitting, that require higher up levels than what the partners are given, so Sitecore needed to set it up. You do have access to pretty much a good admin level as a partner, as a client of your Azure platform, but still there are some restrictions because otherwise you go across a resource from another client that Sitecore has. So you need to agree with them first. Now, how it benefits our clients. So we're talking about a few negative things that can happen when you're in a project, but the overall result was quite good for us. The first thing is we used to spend a lot of time sorting hosting problems as a partner, and that's not a focus in our team. Our team is creating experiences for customers. So that reduced a lot of the time that we were spending on that. Now we focus on what we are good, and if it's any issues in hosting, sometimes we get involved, but in general, we just offload it to Sitecore, and Sitecore take care of them. They set up alerts, monitoring, and so on. It's very stable once you tune it, and that's why testing is so important. When it's tuned, you hardly touch it again. We hardly touch the environments. And if you need to scale, because suddenly your client is running a campaign, or we have a scenario, for example, the firewalls, that was external firewalls failing, and there was traffic, and they have a DDoS attack in this scenario, and we have to increase the scale of the site to deal with the traffic that the firewall wasn't filtering. And it was so easy as switching in Azure the number of instances that you had. It's running on proven Microsoft technologies. So if your team usually is Microsoft knowledge about, easy to tweak, to learn, you can talk with Microsoft, so you're in safe hands. One thing that is important as well is you have a single point of contact for hosting. Like we were talking on premises, if in extreme scenarios, for example, you will have a contractor that is doing all your physical maintenance of your servers. You will have a team that is doing security. Another team is maintaining the software licenses and so on. You can easily have up to 5 teams maintaining everything. In these scenarios, one team taking care of all the platform itself, and then yourself if you're doing development in-house, or us as a partner. A key important thing that clients tend to confuse often, you do have access to Azure. You do have full admin rights. There's both, not full, almost full, because you're not able to cross to other clients' resource groups. But pretty much anything that you do, if you were the owner of the full Azure account, you can do. That's not a restriction. Just as an example here, you can see Airport. That's a snapshot from a full year running the platform for them, and the availability was 99.91. And literally, and even that number is affected because was a node based overseas outside New Zealand that the application is running Dynatrace probably was failing or having access to issues to access through the firewall. So conclusions from ourselves. Our experience, Sitecore Managed Cloud doesn't work for everyone. we have clients that we still manage outside managed cloud. There are many reasons for that. Could be that when you do the cost analysis, doesn't work for them, for example. But also some clients have very specific needs, and then you end with so much that sits Azure outside Azure or in another Azure account that maybe is not worth it for the client. So they not always works. In many of our clients work, so we have only a few that are outside the model. Then be realistic of what you expect. It's not still software as a service solution. So you still managing some level of interaction with the hosting provider. Preparation is key. Don't underestimate what you need to have ready to complete the move. Do a health review. I recommend every client, especially to do it with Sitecore, because Sitecore we are a partner. We do a lot of Sitecore implementations, but we don't do thousands of implementations like probably Sitecore is aware of. So they have a really good process to review the health of your environment. So it's good to get them involved, review the health of your Sitecore solution, and you go from there, whatever you need to modify before moving to the cloud. And again, like we've said before, understand the support process. Don't just call them thinking that you're going to solve the problem. You need to raise tickets. Also, if you need to spin up new environments, you need to know the process through the support portal. It's not difficult, but you just need to follow process. So overall, great solution. Like I say, shifts the focus from hosting all to Sitecore. If you have internal team that is doing Sitecore development, perfect, because your team doesn't need to worry anymore about that. If you have a partner like us as well, for us it's a good solution. It saves us a lot of time. So I hope you enjoyed this presentation. If you have any questions, feel free to raise it with Navneet or myself, or any of our colleagues will be in contact. Happy to help anytime you need. So have a good day and enjoy the rest of the symposium.
Thank you, everyone.